All right, so here it is, January 23rd. Take 10. I keep trying to make it very, very simple, but as it goes, kind of like the last one on Bhakti Yoga, I just want to keep talking about it or keep expanding on it. But I think simplicity is the key. So, really, these are quotes I've brought up a couple times before. I'm going to bring them up again, and I think what's happening is really all I'm doing is inviting anybody who clicks on this to watch the video, inviting you to take a look at these ideas, quotes, and see if they cause a reaction in your heart, in your mind. They sure did for me. And so these are some of the quotes. I had more, but I'm only going to really show a couple that really rocked the boat, rocked my universe. Now, in order to do that, let me also say that these kind of, I guess everything in life, we're constantly moving along and growing and having realization, not just through reading, but actually through feeling it throughout our whole existence. And that's realization. And one of the things we're trying to do is go from the importance of little s self, Jim, and finding the big self-realization. And so you read these things and you go, wow, that's interesting. And then 6 months later, after some more living and meditation, you go, holy moly, that's big. And this is big for me for many reasons, but one of the greatnesses is the last video was on Bhakti Yoga, which is the love, worship, finding a personal God, serving others. That whole religion and that idea is Bhakti Yoga, which is how one can gain self-realization, a oneness with consciousness, God, through that path. So this one also, and I mentioned in that video that we gain knowledge of basically the mind, the spirit, with that path too. And what really attracted me to the religions of India initially was just that spiritual knowledge. That said, that definition, there's also what's called the path of jnana, Jnana, jnana yoga, which is the path of knowledge. And we can take a path of knowledge, which is harder, but these are interchangeable, or they work together in unison. And so the last video is on Bhakti Yoga, and this has got some pretty heady stuff on spirit, mind. Yeah. So let's just go with it and see what happens. I'm going to take these off. Oh, the reason I have these up here is it's quotes from the book on the upper right, Shankara, who was a great Swami guru of about 780 AD. And then the book Sermon on the Mount, according to Vedanta, which really shows a unity of Christianity and Vedanta Hinduism, because they use different words but the same concepts and truths. So in a way, well, anyway, let's just leave it at that. Get rid of this and put up the words. And I got to clear up a couple words, which I think are really, really important. I've said this a million times before. Maybe I'll use this on all my videos, but there are so many words, and one of the great mantras in Vedanta Hinduism is many words, same truth. So whether we're using the word Brahman for the word God, or consciousness, or sometimes they just say on existence, which is God, self-realization with a capital S, the word Atman, some use it for soul, but Atman and Brahman, those first and last words there, Brahman, Atman, they're all as one. So these might be used interchangeably. Please understand that. I did a video 3 videos ago on how we can get into arguments on words, and I don't want to get into that. So there they are. I looked up this morning because I'm going to use this word superimposition. I wanted to put this word impose, which I thought was a great definition. It says force something unwelcome or unfamiliar to be accepted or put in place. All right, so we impose something there. They actually use an example of superimposition. The great Shankara says you have a coiled rope. And maybe it's a little dark and you see it and you think snake. Well, where'd that come from? Well, that's a superimposition. We superimpose something from the past on something else, in this case a rope. And once the superimposition is gone, we see the truth, which is it's a rope, not a snake. And that's happening in life, this superimposition, which he defines as the apparent presentation to consciousness. Some people call it a canvas. I like that word. We have a canvas, and it's things are being created, presented to consciousness by way of remembrance of something previously observed in some other thing. So that example of the rope and the snake, it's a rope and suddenly we think it's a snake. That would be an example of superimposition. Just right off the bat, I guess you could say, I cut my finger, it hurts, right? It has to hurt. Have you ever done something like that and it didn't hurt, and then afterwards you said, well, that should have hurt, and then you kind of almost say that it did? Somebody standing there in the dark, and one person will say, hey, that might be a friend. Another person says, oh, no, it must be an enemy that's going to hurt us. Superimposing ideas and thoughts. And it can be quite repetitive. So, let's just go on with the quotes. Here we go. So this is the Great Shankara. I love that book. So, the superimposition of the ego idea upon existence. We're not talking about ego like he's got a fat head, he's got an ego, and that'll be explained here in about 2 sentences. We're just talking about the idea of I, me. The superimposition of the ego idea upon existence is our first and most important acts as human beings. The moment we have made the central act of superimposition, so here's existence, boom. The moment we have said, I am private, I am separate, I am an individual, we have set upon a kind of chain reaction which makes further superimposition inevitable. The claim to individuality for ourselves implies individuality everywhere. That's just, I don't know, pretty big. It automatically superimposes a multiple world of creatures and objects upon the one undivided reality, the existence which is Brahman. Okay? Notice the capital E and capital B. God, consciousness, existence, Brahman. Ego idea and world appearance, now this is very important, depend upon each other. So if we haven't, in essence, superimposed that idea that I am, we can't have a world appearance. I think that's an amazing idea. Lose the ego idea and transcendental consciousness, and the world appearance must necessarily vanish. I remember once talking to a guy about 20 years ago, and he said, you know, Jim, I was sitting there, and all of a sudden everything disappeared. Well, there's the answer. He lost the idea of ego idea, and it disappeared. Immediately it came back. And, you know, the great Buddha talks about the no self, and that was a very big challenge to gain. He would always remind himself in meditation, no self, no self. Lose the ego idea. And there's many paths. This is, I guess, maybe why I'm bringing this up. There's so many paths. In a way, this explains the power and the beauty of bhakti yoga, the path of worship and love. Because if you can love consciousness, God, back to these top definitions, whether it's through a personal deity of God, Sri Lakshmi, Ramakrishna, Krishna, Buddha, if you can lose the idea of self through pure love, pure worship of consciousness existence, you see how that all works? That you can actually gain self-realization and truth. It's all right there. I just think that's a miracle. Now, if we take this further, he says, Shankara is speaking here of 2 stages in the process of superimposition. First, the ego idea is superimposed on the inner self, the existence reality. Then the ego idea, this is really cool, searching outward, as it were, identifies itself with the body and the body's mental or physical attributes and actions. We say as a matter of course, I am fat, I am awake, walking, I am sitting. unbelievably powerful, searching outward as it were. Have you ever noticed how a child has they're just complete freedom? They're complete Brahman, God, consciousness. They are divine. And look at how moved we are by babies. And then you can almost see the identification of individuality evolve. I'll just say it, leave it at that. I just think that's the most incredible quote. It's an amazing statement of spirit, mind, and body, all in one. And then I will take it one step further from the book, The Sermon on the Mount, according to Vedanta. He's discussing the search for perfection. I know for myself, this really moved me. This was a huge quote, and I brought it up before, but I'm going to do it again. Because as I started meditating and looking at Vedanta Hinduism, I didn't read it. Well, yeah, I was reading the book, and that line just jumped out. And it was, I'm constantly trying to get, whether it's when I used to ride bikes or race, have a perfect race or a perfect health so I can race well, or perfect financials or perfect whatever. No. And how it just kept repeating and repeating and repeating. And so here was this paragraph. Behind every human effort, there is a desire, unconscious and misdirected though it may be, to find Sat Chit Ananda, in other words, the supreme reality, God. Sat Chit Ananda stands for infinite knowledge or infinite consciousness and bliss. It's another word for God, consciousness. I should have put that in the first part of this video. But it's interesting, that search for perfection or trying to make things just right, which I guess can be a good thing to try to make things better. But to get fixated on it, attached to it, having that run our life without understanding what we're really trying to do, that would be quite the challenge, I'd say. But since most of us are not aware, the next sentence, that to find God as our real purpose in life, we continue to repeat, this is great, repeat the same enjoyments and sufferings over and over again. So you can see also superimposition and how all these things, it's like an accordion of these things just keep getting superimposed on top and top, and I have to do this and I have to do this, and this remembrance of the past. We don't even remember these things. It just keeps going, rat-a-tat-a-tat. And what's important there is enjoyments and sufferings. It's not just times that were challenges or times of pain, let's say. I found personally that sometimes, as Shankara talks about it in his book, one of the great coverings is not just times of difficulty. It's, he calls it the covering of bliss, that those can be quite the challenge because we're actually getting very, very close. When we have that great feeling, we're getting close to that consciousness God. And then we can almost start to repeat that, trying desperately to get it again instead of just continuing to meditate on God, love, continuing to serve others. That's my opinion. I try to steer from those opinions, but I just think that's a great line. We continue to repeat the same enjoyments and sufferings over and over again. We waste our energies in ephemeral achievements. Hope I'm saying that word correctly. Worldly stuff things, looking for infinite reward in the finite. Only after we have passed through many experiences of pleasure and pain does spiritual discrimination dawn in us. The spiritual discrimination is used quite often in the Hindu, probably Buddhist too, but I know in the Hindu words, kind of separating out the idea of spirit and stuff. Thus we begin to see that nothing in this world can give us lasting satisfaction. Key there is lasting satisfaction. Can we get pleasure? Is it great when we do some things with our children and have some joy, or pay our bills, or get a new house? Can we have joy in that? Of course we can. But if we want lasting satisfaction, then we understand that desire for abiding happiness, for perfection, can only be fulfilled in the eternal truth of God. So for me, when I read that, repeating the same enjoyments and sufferings, And then coupling that with that idea of superimposition right above there, that hit me like a brick in the head. Very, very powerful. And I guess then, as I continued on my path of meditation and religious path, I started to realize that's where I started to see that if the power of that bhakti yoga, that the more we meditate, just meditate on the divinity within, or maybe I should say for me, sometimes I just see it as the canvas everywhere. And we meditate on that, on God, on consciousness, on purity. There's so many ways it's described you can do that. So many paths of meditation. But I'm going to go back to this because I just think this, lose the ego idea in transcendental consciousness. So we lose that idea that's been superimposed, and the world appearance must necessarily vanish. All truth is just given to us. Self-realization is given to us, is maybe a better way to put that. I don't know exactly. Yeah. I wish I could say I was there, but I'm not. Have I seen pinhole peaks? Yeah, maybe. I think all of us have. I really believe that. I just think a lot of times we don't recognize what happened. And maybe I'll just leave it at that. I don't know. Boy, that gets me emotional. Yeah. So let me take this display off. Yeah. I think it's real key then to just kind of follow up with the idea that, again, the oneness of all the religions, and I can go back and forth. The Lord Buddha talks about love and caringness and joy and cultivating that, which will then get rid of the cravings and the aversions, so the sufferings and the cravings, the craving enjoyment. If we can not be attached to that and not identify with those things, let go of all of that, whether it's jnana yoga, whether it's bhakti yoga, whatever that path is for you. I just think that's really, really powerful. And the simplicity of just meditating on purity, love, God, the beauty of just serving others and helping others, and how that will allow or percolate up everything, and we can detach and let go of all that superimposition. And I guess that's the purpose of this. But I just love those quotes. And I simply invite you, if anybody's watching this and they like those quotes, well, go grab the books and see what moves you. Boy, I don't know. Maybe next week I'll have a whole different path. I don't think so. My path has been pretty stable for quite some time now. But I do know that we all have our unique paths. And maybe we can define it as mostly bhakti, mostly jnana, mostly this or that. But yeah. So I hope you enjoy those quotes. I just think they're great. Absolutely terrific.